So next we move on to switches. We have a nice little bag of switches here. There's red and blue. There are some nuts floating around in there, which, if you recall the instructions, we really won't need. There's a lot of nuts in there. So remove all the nuts and washers. And of course, the switch has got double nuts on it to set the height. Oh, I didn't realize there was so many nuts here. So I'm sorry I'm doing this off camera. I guess I could do it on camera. Well, this is going to take a bit. And of course, being hardware, I won't throw any of this away. It'll get collected up as additional hardware. Just never have enough of it. So he makes a couple of comments here on bad switches, so he recommends testing each switch before assembling it and actually looking at the oh, that's really tight. Looking at the depth of the pins that are going to get soldered in place to make sure one of the pins isn't pushed in. He comments that a couple of assemblers have had a bad switch, where one of the 3 pins down here was pushed up inside of the body of the switch, and that kept the switch from operating correctly, and that took quite some time to debug and figure out. So I will pay attention to that. Ooh, you're tight. Okay, little washer, what are you caught on? Huh. I can get it to rock. That is ridiculous. It's like the hole in the washer is a little bit too small. There, it fell off. Oh, a lot of hardware here. Of course, switches come with mounting hardware. On the original 8800, the switches weren't bolted to the front panel. They just floated through holes in the front panel, just like this assembly will be. You can probably see here, well, maybe you can't. It'll be on camera. There's both red and blue switches. The blue switches all look to be double pole, single pole, double throw, which typically means the center pin can be connected to one or the other outer pins, but not both. The red ones look like they're center off. Double pole, or God, I keep doing that, single pole, double throw. So the single pole just means that there is only one switch assembly, it's not ganged, and the double throw means it can connect to one or the other set of outer pins. Well, we're getting through the mess here. A lot of hardware. Probably should have prepped these off camera, but I didn't want to pre-open the bag. I wanted to do it on camera. So we experienced it together. So it looks like that gets all the switches separated. Move this hardware out of the way. Test each switch, and the pins on that one look okay. So in this case, these switches I don't believe are polarized. Especially these blue ones could go in either orientation. I will of course try to put them all in the same orientation just for consistency and because I'll know, nobody else will. Well, you will if you follow along on camera. You can see that these toggle either up or down. So I'll look okay. The red ones are a center off, so they can be clicked down or up. That one has a problem. Well, this one acts just like it. Maybe it doesn't. Can't say I'm super happy with the action. This one does the same thing. That just must be the way they're manufactured. It doesn't feel like the handle comes all the way back to center. That one's much better. It does come back to center. I may not use these. I'm not as happy with the action on them as I should be. Although it sounds like mechanically they're okay. I could be happier with that. We're going to do a little bit of testing here. Go to continuity. Oh, this meter's not very quick. I'm going to get on the center pin and one of the edge pins. The switch does appear to work. Okay, I guess I will just go with the switches he provided. And we'll see what we get. Put the switches in place without soldering them. 17 two-position toggles on the top row. The power switch location, and 8 3-position momentary switches on the bottom row. So these have a logo. Oh, that's tight. That's probably why. That's exactly why sometimes pins are getting pushed up in the body of the pin, because those are difficult to push down in there. Definitely will want to check the leads before I solder. Well, in some ways, having these tight holes will make the assembly easier, just because the switches are being held naturally in place. In some ways, it will make it more difficult. Definitely going to want to inspect the pins that I'm poking through the board due to the amount of pressure I'm having to put on them to get them to seat down in place. And I will toggle them all a few times before I do any soldering as well. I can see now that yes, this could damage the switches. Attempt to get them all in flush. It'll help a bit with the alignment. A little bit tricky to do here. Of course, that one rocked a bit. Oh, and these are going in quite a bit easier. I think they're tight enough they won't fall out. Maybe not. So that sits all the switches in place. Put the switches in place without soldering. Put the front panel in place to hold the switches in the correct position. So we will attempt to do that next. I can see this is going to be a little bit tricky. What are you getting hung up on? There we go. Flip those all up because I think it'll be a little more. Oh, I was afraid of that. No, and a bunch of switches just fell out. Okay, this is going to be interesting to do. We will revisit this. Down again. I think I'm going to use some blue painter's tape to help hold the kind of sandwich together here. Should be able to tack onto this front and peel away cleanly, although I really don't want to get it onto the silk screen. I'll have to be a little bit careful here. And we'll try this again. Is the tape causing that? I'm not sure why that front panel's rocking around so much. It might be that I've got too much tension over there. Trying to kind of roughly keep things in place. This is going to be kind of interesting to do because there's a switch that's completely come loose. A whole bunch of them have now. What the heck? Why can't I get that to stay sandwiched? What the heck? Okay, maybe the better way to do this. I don't need this to be really tight. I just need it to be tight enough to keep the plastic from completely falling off. While I flip this thing around to solder. Well, that's a little bit tricky. I'm really only going to solder one pin on each switch and then check them all again. So it looks like I can push that all down flush. Now let's see what we get here. I'm putting some pressure down through the board to help push the switch. In place, then giving the solder time to re-solidify. Kind of looking at the height of the pins through the board to make sure they seem consistent. Kind of thought these switches might be a challenge, and I was right. Oh, that did not work well. Did not let that sit long enough. You probably missed it when the board rocked over. The switch fell back down and then the solder set up. Now, if you recall, these upper toggle switches were fairly difficult to insert. Took some pressure to get them through the holes. So I think mechanically they're holding themselves in alignment a little bit better. I see, of course, all three pins are poked up through. On each switch, they look to be about the same height. So I haven't accidentally pushed a pin up inside of the switch body by having to kind of force it down through the PCB. Now that tacks all of the switches in place. All but the power switch. I did miss it as I walked around there. Straight edge here that I can locate. I want to check. So I'm going to go across the tips of all of these, see if anybody is grossly higher than the others. There's one here that might be a little bit higher than the others, so I'm going to reflow the solder and just push him back in a little bit tighter. It wasn't off by very much. They're all reasonably square. there's not that far off. I think I'm okay, actually. I think we can go ahead and continue to solder. Bigger tip on my pencil here would probably be helpful. I know, I'm being silent again. Focused on soldering. Getting the switches in wasn't too bad. He probably had instructions in the book that would have made it easier in the approach I took. And of course we need to be able to get that front panel off, because we got to mount the LEDs and then use the front panel for alignment on those. But that will be a separate video. Hopefully this format of trying to keep the videos a little bit shorter, even if I end up publishing more, works for people. I think it's a better format. Sorry, I'm sitting here groaning. Haven't had breakfast yet. Been up since before 5 a.m. Had a couple cups of coffee, haven't eaten. Probably should have eaten before sitting down to solder. This morning I've done my editing on the two previous videos to this one. I've got one of them currently uploading to YouTube. I think it's going to be pretty much a video and YouTube weekend. I might get out today and hit up the computer recycle place. Don't know yet. That should have gotten all the switches. Starting to look really nice. The front panel here makes all the difference on this. This should come off, and it's actually coming off pretty easily. Excellent. Excellent. Set the front panel aside so I don't scratch it. And I think we have switches. Straighten up the two disc caps just because I don't like seeing them crooked. Action on the switches feels real good. Down up. It's a little crunchy sounding. Excellent. We have switches. So we're definitely making progress on the build here. I will wrap this segment up, and I'll see you in the next video.